Hello, Internet. I am Pastor Recoil, and welcome to my parish. Today is the third Sunday of Easter, and we're going to talk about it. Welcome to Pastor Recoil's Parish, where I talk about some things you may not have heard about in church, either because it's not quite appropriate for all audiences, or it just isn't something that's easy to talk about in a sermon. The readings for the third Sunday of Easter are Acts 2, 14a and 36 through 41, Psalm 116, 1 through 4 and 12 through 19, 1 Peter 1, 17 through 23, and Luke 24, 13 to 35. We're going to talk about a prank that Jesus plays on a few of his disciples. See, a lot of times we get this picture of Jesus from Christians that is not all that deep. He's a gentle teacher telling everyone to love one another, or he's got this air of piety around him because he's Jesus, he doesn't sin. Or even more than this, Jesus gets depicted as a bit detached from the world, and he feels like he doesn't quite belong, almost like an alien. He's God, so obviously he's better than the rest of us, and that comes out in the way that Jesus gets portrayed. And this leads us to try to spiritualize things about Jesus, so we miss obviously hilarious scenes like the one that we get in today's reading from Luke's Gospel, when Jesus plays a joke on two of his disciples. So to set the scene, it is the day of resurrection, probably in the afternoon or evening. Two of Jesus' disciples, one named Clopas and another who is unnamed, are walking to a town called Emmaus, about 7 miles away from Jerusalem. Now, there is a lot of speculation on who the other disciple is because they're not named, but I like to think it's Mary of Clopas, either Clopas' wife or daughter, just because it's another thing that would stick it to the misogynists. Anyway, these two disciples are walking along and Jesus starts walking with them. Except Luke says that their eyes were kept from recognizing him. Now that's not they didn't recognize Jesus. That's much more active. They were kept from seeing who Jesus was. Or in other words, Jesus is starting his little joke. Then Jesus says to them, "What have you been talking about as you walk along?" And Clopas says, "Dude, where have you been these last 3 days? Are you the only person that doesn't know what happened in Jerusalem?" And Jesus, playing this incredibly dumb, says, "Why? What happened?" And makes the two disciples tell him all about what just happened to him over the past few days. They even said that some of the other disciples, some of the women, said that Jesus was risen, but they weren't quite sure. So after hearing all of this about himself, Jesus then proceeds to tell them everything that was supposed to happen to the Messiah from Scripture as they walk along the road. Then, by the time they get to Emmaus, it's late, and Jesus starts acting like he's going to keep walking. And the disciples convince him to stay, since it's late and the roads aren't safe at night. So Jesus does, and finally, when they share a meal together, the disciples recognize Jesus, only for him to vanish before their eyes. How can you read that as anything other than the resurrected Jesus having a little bit of fun with these two disciples? And then when they finally recognize him, he's gone. I think Jesus really enjoyed that. Now, as much as this is an important resurrection appearance of Jesus, it's also a reminder that being a follower of Jesus is supposed to be fun too. Now, that's not to say it isn't sometimes difficult, but there's a perception of Christians by those outside of our community that we are just boring. And I don't necessarily think that perception is wrong. Especially my own tradition, there's not much exciting about the way that we do church, especially since it's basically the same thing every single weak. Now, there's reasons for that sameness, but we also need to make time to have fun, to actually enjoy ourselves. We're supposed to have the joy of resurrection life in us, but we don't often show it. Most of the time, we're downright grumpy. But this story and others like it in the Gospels can help remind us of the joy and fun that Jesus models for us. And we can bring that along with his loving presence with us wherever we go. So if you want to see more content like this, check out the links to my right or click the logo below my face to subscribe so you'll know when my next video comes out. Thank you for watching, and take the time this week to love your neighbor as yourself, especially if you don't like them all that much.